Hi, and welcome to the Wellbeing Show. We're back live. I feel like I haven't been here in a very, very long time. And I'm flying solo tonight because my so-called techie is off having a party or something like that. So I'm going to get him when he comes back. You gents can move now. You don't have to sort of That's all right. They were freezing because I told them you have to freeze. I'm like a really horrible person before the show, and I terrified people, so they weren't moving in terror. But we're live now, so you might see me, folks, a bit distracted. If you're watching this live or you're watching it later on, but that's only because I'm hopeless at this technical stuff and I'm totally lost without James there. But we'll sort of soldier on somehow. We've got some great guests this evening from Outsidedge Theatre, whom they'll be talking about what they do. Before we jump into that, just want to let you know if you're listening to this on the 5th of April at 9 p.m. UK time, between 9 and 10 p.m. UK time, it is live. So drop me a line on WhatsApp, 07506 319 745, if you've got any questions for the gents that we have with us, and you want that question answered. I don't know, if it's very interesting, I might even call you and get you on the show with them. So you never know, I could make you a star. There you go. If it's outside of 9 to 10 p.m. on Wednesday, the 5th of April, don't call me. I might be in bed. All right. So I don't want to hear from you. But between 9 and 10, it'd be lovely to hear from you. That's enough from me. So we have the amazing trio of Matt Steinberg, Christopher. You haven't got Christopher H. That's your anonymous name, I believe. We'll get your full name from you in a second. And David Charcombe, all from Outsidedge Theatre. And it's so fantastic to have you back again, Matt, because you've been on before. And to see you again, David. I haven't seen you in a while. And to meet you for the first time, Christopher. Christopher what? What's your second name?
Holt.
Is that an instruction or is that a name?
No, it's H-O-L-T.
H-O-L-T. Okay, Holt. Great. Lovely to have you chaps on, and thanks for joining us, and thanks for giving up your time on a Wednesday evening. Let's just jump into what Outsidedge Theatre is, for those people who may not have heard about it. Which one of you wants to tell us about Outsidedge? Do you want to have a scrap about it? Or should I just nominate somebody? David's saying, not me. He's pointing
I don't know who he's pointing to. It looks like
I don't know, because that's like, if that comes back this way, they either go to Christopher.
I think it's Matt.
They go to Matt.
Why don't I do it? So
Matt, go on.
Outsidedge Theatre Company is the UK's only theatre company and participatory arts charity that's focused on addiction. We create theatre about stories related to addiction, and we run free weekly activities, drama, dance, creative writing, performing arts activities for people affected by addiction to support their recovery maintenance, support their well-being, foster a peer support recovery community.
Right.
So we're incredibly unique, and although there's a new project that's opening at the Florida Studio Theatre in, I think, Sarasota, which is going to not replicate what Outsidedge is, but it's a recovery project that's based in the theater, and it will do very, very similar things. So we've been around since 1999, and it's just really exciting that other arts organizations are starting to do really similar work, and it's becoming much more mainstream.
It's odd to me. I don't know if it's odd to you. Maybe thinking about Christopher might have some thoughts about this, but it's odd to me that there's only one theatre company doing this. That just somehow seems really strange. I don't know why. But
well, I should say that for any colleagues that are watching this, that there are a lot of other theatre companies that work with other groups, and there's a lot of crossover. So there's Geese Theatre and Clean Break and Synergy who work in the prison system, but also work with people with complex needs, and Geese Theatre has just started a staging recovery program a couple of years ago, which is working with people affected by addiction. And there's Fallen Angels Dance Theatre, which works with people affected by addiction in Chester, across Liverpool. So there's a whole recovery arts movement. And actually, in Bristol, there's a new theatre company called, I think it's called Morning After, and they've set up something very, very similar to Outsidedge. So I'm afraid actually that slowly our little mantle of the UK's only might be slightly compromised, but I've been using it for so long, I'm sort of hesitant to give it up.
Let me frame the question a different way. Why were you the only one for so long, and how did this unique project start, and where did it come from? And I say that because my background in the arts, and I do have a background in the arts as an actor and director, that's how I knew Matt when I was pretending incompetently to be a producer. He had to tolerate me, poor guy, but there you go. But my background was very much that there were lots of issues around sort of addiction issues within the arts, certainly within the performing arts, without a doubt. And yet there was only one company doing some stuff around that. That's interesting. Why? Any thoughts about why that is, chaps? Christopher, what about you? Any thoughts?
I think it's down to Phil Fox's vision. Phil Fox was the creator of the company all those years ago, and he basically realized that when he was doing drugs, he wasn't interested in theatre, and when he was doing theatre, he wasn't interested in doing drugs.
Okay.
He thought, there's something in this, there's something here. And it was through his lived experience that he went, I think I've got an idea that might help people. And I think that's, to me, replicated in today's company, in today's Outsidedge. We still have the energy and the knowledge of what's happened to us and to our participants. And we want to work together following Phil's vision. Right. I think, Dave, you'd agree with me on that, wouldn't you?
Very much so, very much so.
David, you were being brought in.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really interesting to hear Christopher talking about it now in 2023. And I am going back when Phil and I mean, when was that? When did it start? 99. Okay, 1999. So around then, Phil and I had both, I was an actor before, and we got into recovery in 86. I was 86, and maybe he was 86 or 85. Anyway, what happened was we were actors, and we didn't know where to go. And I was an actor who had lost everything and lost my confidence. And apart from that, I didn't know how to speak to anybody. No. Because by the end of my journey, I didn't do anything without a substance inside me. So there I was, kind of wet behind the ears, not bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, but very fraggled and fragile. And Phil started some kind of workshops for a few of us that had been theatricals, trying to find our way. I mean, it wasn't like, oh, let's write a play and do a theatre group. It was just trying to get together to learn how to communicate, because certainly for me, learning how to communicate without a drink or a drug inside me was uncharted territory.
Yeah, right, okay.
So that's kind of how we started our little gatherings, and there was 2 and 4 and maybe 5, and we did that, and that was the seed of the seed, really.
Right.
And I was astounded by what Phil was able to do, and I guess I didn't understand the enormity of Phil's vision at the time. We were just kind of struggling and trying to sort of learn communication skills,
right?
Because so much is written and talked about and publicized about rehab, but what's shocked me the most is I did the rehab and it changed my life, and I'm most grateful for it. But no one showed me what to do when I was let out of the protective bubble.
Sure.
So this really, the seeds of this is helped me, and it's helped thousands. Well, I guess it is thousands of people now. Yeah. So I'm really touched by hearing Christopher explain it all these years later so succinctly. And yes, no one knew, there were no other theatre companies like it. And also, you've got to think back at that time. there was no kind of celebrity rehab. People didn't know too much about recovery. You know, we're proud and we're out now, but there was still a stigma.
Yeah.
Not so much alcoholic, okay, but oh no, dirty drug addict.
So it came from an exigent need, and people sort of dynamically created something and sort of got back to creating as they knew how, as professionals, relearning those skills, I guess. I'm intrigued because I think in sort of mainstream culture, there's some sort of assumption that creativity is linked somehow to drugs and drink and rock and roll and all that sort of stuff. But yet you seem to be saying the opposite, guys, that actually it isn't helpful, that, you know, you will get to a point where you can't be creative or can't be the people that you wanted to be, or they're engaged in. Christopher, do you know anything about that? I mean, is it sort of an experience?
Oh, absolutely.
Talk about
absolutely. I was absolutely of the belief when I was using that it was because of the cocaine that I was such a good theatre director. Because I was so clever, and of course I wasn't clever. I was stunted. I was blinkered. I was arrogant. I was grandiose. I was a monster.
Right.
And I didn't make beautiful work. I made arrogant work. I made aggressive work.
So you then have a background professionally in theatre and the arts yourself.
Yeah. I've been there.
Would you mind telling me a little bit about that and what it was like? That if you like, a little bit prior to the recovery. We'll define the term recovery a bit later, but for now, for folks listening, let's just sort of accept that recovery means something about stopping using, but we'll define it a bit better, right? So you, prior to your recovery, is that an okay word to use, Christopher?
Yeah.
Prior to that, you were a professional, successful? You were...
Oh, I stumbled out of drama school.
Right.
Got my first job, and I worked for 4 years solidly.
Right.
Which is very, very rare for an actor.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, my first job was the musical Hair.
Okay, right.
And I was touring Europe with so much to smoke that I never saw the day without the fog of marijuana.
Right.
And then so much to toot when the parties came along that I was constantly in a state of up and down and up and down and up and down.
Hmm.
And I came home and I went into Les Mis, and then I did Cats. And it just barreled on until...
So you were very seriously professional.
Oh, yeah.
Riding high in your career with this stuff.
Oh, I smoked a spliff on the roof of the National Theatre when I was supposed to be in a technical rehearsal.
Okay.
And I thought I was the last rocker.
He's joking, he's joking. He's really, this is not real. He didn't really... Just in case.
No, I did, and they can't fire me now, Noel, because it's not a dream. Actually, I did get to work again at the National Theatre a couple of years ago as a voice coach.
Okay,
which was a wonderful experience because I was sober by then, and I felt like it was like a beautiful circle coming up.
Yeah, I could hear that. Yeah, I can. But what convinced you that these two things went hand in hand? Was it the culture around you? Was it something about you? What do you think it was?
Well, I think it's something that we deal with a lot, which is dual diagnosis.
Okay.
I'm actually bipolar.
Right.
And there's a lot of tension within the bipolar mind that makes you think you need to medicate.
Okay.
That makes you think you need to be high.
Yeah.
Makes you think you need to control the lows. And in fact, what you're doing is you're making yourself very sick.
Yeah.
And I was very sick 3 times. I was in hospital, sectioned. My liberty had been withdrawn.
Yeah.
I had nowhere to go. And I thank my lucky stars that after the 3rd time, I met David.
Okay. So I just want to check in with you that you're okay talking about this stuff. It's not bringing back too many triggering memories, because being sectioned is a very frightening thing to go through.
Yeah, it is. It really.
If anybody's listening to this and maybe you're sort of having some memories about it, I want to say that that's okay. There are plenty of support groups around, Mind, Rethink, etc. Reach out to them, get some support and help, talk to people about your feelings. If you are having difficult feelings, folks, and you're listening to this, that's not unusual. There's nothing wrong with you. That's a normal response to difficult topics, and there's plenty of help for you. And do reach out to people and don't sort of hold on to these demons on your own, as it were. And you're okay, Christopher? You're sort of fine talking about these things?
Noel, it's actually how I make my money now.
Is it?
How I live my life.
Great.
How I want to be.
Okay.
Recovery is central to my life.
Good.
It's central to my continued good mental health.
Yeah.
Which has been hand in hand with my recovery. I haven't needed any intervention since I found recovery.
Great.
And I come to my recovery life and my recovery friends and my recovery support system, and they carry me every day.
Okay. Shall we take a little bit of time to say what we think recovery means? Because it's a word that's been used quite a lot in this conversation. So I don't have a specific definition, but I'm intrigued, and I want to hear from all three of you, because I think we'll have some very interesting thoughts on that word, and from different perspectives. So I might jump in with Matt first, if that's all right. You weren't expecting.
No, I'm not the expert, actually.
But that's, you mean that as in it's not a lived experience for you, right?
Not a lived. Well, I would say. I mean, although I run Outsidedge Theatre Company, yeah. I mean, I'm not in recovery, so I still drink.
Yeah.
So it's not something that I've ceased.
So as an outsider in outside theatre, tell me about an outsider's perspective on recovery. What your thoughts and feelings are about it?
It's something that I think very early on, when I started working at Outsidedge, I had to start to understand and grapple with. And the tradition of where Outsidedge came from sits within the 12-step tradition. So it was founded by someone who was very embedded in AA and NA and the traditions of the 12-step recovery movement, and that did not sit very comfortably for some people at Outsidedge, and it sat incredibly comfortably for others. And one of the things that was important for me as artistic director of the theatre company was that we remained accessible and open to whoever needed us. And so there has definitely, over the last 5 years, I have led a conscious move away from terminology like recovery while still trying to keep it present and alive within our recovery community. So we haven't swept it under the carpet and rejected it. But we have people that come to Outsidedge on a weekly basis because they don't want to drink as much, they don't want to use as many drugs. And some people will say that they have no addiction issues, but through engaging with Outsidedge, they'll then say, oh, actually, you know what? I've been in recovery for 20 years, they'll say. I just haven't had a drink in 20 years. I just didn't think of myself as an addict anymore. But keeping that conversation alive has either kept me sober when I've slipped up. It's allowed me to do whatever I need to do to get back on the path that I need to get on. Yeah. Whereas, other people will have come to us and say, well, look, I'm sort of okay with the fact that I go to the pub, but I do it way too much and my doctor says it's dangerous. So this is giving me a healthy, sober activity and a support community to make different decisions that I need. Clearly, many people that are coming to Outsidedge are coming because they've identified drugs and alcohol or the effects of someone else's drug and alcohol use as being an impediment or something that they're not, that they'd like to change. And so I think for me, a lot of what the notion of recovery or harm reduction has become is about taking a conscious choice in your life to do something differently than what you maybe were doing without being very conscious of it, or doing something more more in control. So I know that sounds slightly like I'm sitting on the fence, because we want to respect as many people's lived experiences and traditions as possible, but equally I suppose it's important that term recovery is both respected but also challenged within the recovery community that we work in. which I know that David and Christopher might now string me up and feather me and tar me for saying all that. But I also think that having been around Outsidedge for the last 20-something years, David would also understand why that decision has been made.
Well, also I think one of the things about the word that's being used is it's open to individual interpretation. So, which is why I'm asking you individually to think about it. I don't think it's particularly owned by anybody or any one person. It's a collection of voices involved. And these are debates within that, certainly within the 12-step movement, there are significant debates. If you think about NA and the use of medication, etc., it's a debate that's been going for many years.
Well, it's funny because David actually took me to my first AA meeting, which was absolutely fascinating. And in part, I suppose, because very early on when I started working for Outsidedge, I had that as a question, and so he took me to one that you weren't chairing it, but you had one of the roles in it, and it was I got to say, it was the most theatrical thing I have possibly ever seen. It was phenomenal, but also grappling with that question led Christopher and I to make, I suppose, my first piece of theater with a company, which was called Check In, Check Out, which at the heart of it was very much about people's, recovery journeys, whatever that was, but also also individuals challenging the notion of recovery. So although, Christopher took us through his sort of very, very clear 12-step journey, one of the other participants who featured in the show rejected that fully in his, during his rehabilitation and said, I don't believe in that. What I did was CBT and it worked.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. David, you've been sort of nodding away. You have to agree or disagree. I'm interested in your perspective on.
Well, I am, but before that, I just have to own this. I didn't know Christopher was in hair. I was in hair, in the first hair.
You can't remember seeing each other. That's the problem.
It's been around so long, it should be called toupee by now.
Absolutely. It's all a blur.
Production.
All a blur.
Well, so the question, recovery for me, simply is finally being able to be comfortable in my own skin.
Okay.
But what I've seen from the seed of Phil's vision, it has expanded, and it wouldn't have expanded to the. I mean, it's so wide reaching now, and I don't think it would have got as big as it is if it was pure as 12-step only. And it's also interesting to hear Matt explain how it's expanded. I think it would be too rigid. Yes, I'm proud to be a recovering addict and alcoholic, but it is not the only way. I mean, the Mujahideen of the 12-step movements may disagree, but that's my personal experience. And having had, I guess, longevity, a lot of my life in recovery now, it works. And I've talked to various members of the cast a little bit about this. But what can I say? When I see them perform, they're united.
Okay. So, Christopher, do you want to tell us your thoughts?
My definition of recovery comes from AA. That's my backbone, and yet I'm in a position of holding the groups that I run.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
I can't be draconian. I can't be somebody who doesn't understand and doesn't have a connection with people who are struggling, or people. We've recently had a participant who has started on the abstinence journey, and he's been rewarded every time he announces his days. The company have applauded, and that's a wonderful flag being waved. But we also have people for whom addiction is not the main reason they come to Outsidedge. There are people from very vulnerable corners of society who have found that the same tenets of improved communication, self-esteem, self-care, confidence are helpful to them. We also have people who've been in recovery for 20 years, but we have other people who are there because of the community we offer is an inclusive community for vulnerable adults.
Yeah, who might identify with theatre as a useful vehicle for them. So the definition of who might be able to come is quite broad. Is it completely self-selecting, Matt, or is there a criteria?
I mean, so we run drop-in groups across the week, and anyone can attend those as long as they're sober on the day. So yeah. Our only criteria for attendance is that they can't have used. They can, if they're on medication prescribed by a doctor, that's fine. Yeah. But they can't use up to the point of the activity. Whatever they do after the activity finishes is up to them, and they can come back the next day. So we're not running we're not doing urine testing or breathalyzers or anything when people walk in, but there's an expectation that
on trust, as it were. Yeah.
But inevitably, there are sessions where people will be removed because it's clear that they're drunk or they're high. But we always say to them, just come back tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, people make bad decisions when they're under the influence, so that's fine. That's just part of life, isn't it? And so there has to be respect that that's going to be happening. What I suppose I'm getting at is, say somebody was interested in coming along, but they had no substance misuse issues at all, but they had maybe some mental health issues, that they could self-select and choose to come along.
Absolutely. I mean, I think one of our facilitators put it really well years ago, and he said, if people have found us, then they need to be there.
Okay.
There's for whatever reason, they have looked us up and found us. I mean, we say very clearly what we are on the tin, which is also inclusive of people that might be at risk of harmful addictive behaviors. So people with, who are lonely, people with poor mental health, any range of complex needs. But, if you found Outsidedge Theatre Company, you found us for a reason, and we're there for you.
Right. And interestingly, you have, Christopher, you're one of those people who found Outsidedge at the time that you needed it. Is that? Yeah. Would you mind just sharing that a little bit?
Well, it actually found me.
Did it?
Because I was part of a day program on the Harrow Road called the Westminster Drug Program.
Okay.
And there was a big commotion amongst the attendants because David Charkham was coming.
Oh.
I didn't know who David Charkham was. I was totally ignorant, but everyone was very excited that David was coming because he hadn't been for a couple of weeks, and they were really looking forward to seeing him. So I thought, right, well, I'm having some of this. And I got in there. I got it because there was only a limited space because of the tiny little rooms at Westminster Drug Program, that particular venue, and full of the esprit that I bring to life. I went up to David after the session and I said, David, have you written a book? Is there something I can Google to read that you've created? And he said, Google Outsidedge.
Ah, okay, right, nice.
And that was the beginning of my journey.
Nice.
He actually said, if you like Googling so much, Google Outsidedge.
That's lovely. What a lovely story. That's a great thing, David. Well done, you. But how come you'd ended up at the Westminster Drugs Project? Because you were
that was
singing all dancing.
Well, no, there was another major psychiatric breakdown. I ended up in a hospital,
right?
And I was sectioned again.
Yeah.
And somebody somewhere in that hospital said to me, "You have to address your drug program, your drug problem." And I don't know why they say cometh the hour, cometh the teacher, or the idea that when you're ready, when you've gone so far, you've got the gift of desperation, and I was finished. I was done.
Right.
And so I started attending CA meetings first, which were the ones that they made sense to me because they connected with my major abuse, which was cocaine. And then that went on for a few months, and my workplace were incredibly supportive, and because I was recovering from a very serious nervous breakdown. And then I joined first as a participant. I turned up at my first session. I was 45 minutes late because I couldn't find it, but I thought I'd come all the way to Fulham, and I don't live anywhere near Fulham. I thought, I'm not going to put this off me. Sorry, I just got to plug my computer in because it's...
That's no problem at all. This is live direct, folks.
I got there, and within 10 minutes, I was improvising in tears and enjoying the atmosphere so much. Because
was that your first time back in theatre for a while then?
It was first time performing, yeah, because I've been working as a director and a maker of theatre.
Yeah.
And there I was being an actor again,
Wow.
of truth, without hiding anything, without pretending.
And without any drugs in your system to mask
Not by
the
then,
experience. Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
And I made connections with people. I just thought, these are my people. These are my people. And I think this is something that is really key to the continued success. The relationships that the participants bond with themselves. They care for each other. They look for each other. They support each other. When I've directed a performance, I always ask the participants afterwards. They're really excited because they've just performed for a live audience and they've been applauded and they're really high. I say to them, what are you going to do with that high? How are you going to deal with it?
Yeah.
And they invariably say, we're going to go and have a cup of tea together. We're going to spend some time in a cafe. You know, there's this bonding that is essential to their continued success in the company. So yes, so I did a couple of shows with the company. I was fortunate enough to be asked to assistant direct a couple of shows, which I really enjoyed. Then Matt came along and I went back to being an actor again, which I was thrilled at, because again, it's this whole thing of creating work from a total point of abstinence.
Yeah.
So I'm not using when I read the script or we devised the script. I was not using during rehearsals. I was not using during any of the production, and it was beautiful. And I really found that particular performance to be one of the most liberating of my entire career.
Really?
Yeah, it was an amazing piece of theatre, and it had a great impact on myself, and all of my friends and family who saw it were really moved by what was basically my story,
right,
that we had theatricalized, and everybody else's in the piece.
Okay.
And then the opportunity came along to take the job that I have now, which is the associate theatre facilitator. And I just said, yes, I want to apply for it. I want to be involved. I want to put my hat in the ring. And
it seems to me that that's quite important, that journey you've had within the organization. And, you know, it also seems to me it's not that accidental, that maybe it's part of the ethos of the organization itself. Is that right, Matt? Do you?
Yeah, very much. I mean, it's
right.
Great participation pathways is what we call them for service users.
And again, I missed that. Sorry.
Participation pathways. So there are people
participation pathways, right?
They don't want to progress, and that's cool. You know, they want to do drop-ins and they want to do the same drop-in week after week and not go to an intermediate acting group and then, you know, do a public performance with the advanced acting group. So sometimes progression isn't actually moving forward. It's just doing what you want to do in the way that you want to do it, and that's empowering and that's good. But for other people like Christopher, you know, who have, you know, who want to stretch, I suppose, themselves in a different way, but also to take their experience and reapply it into the company and support other people. We also provide pathways for them to, you know, to take on volunteering opportunities where they learn, you know, from Christopher to be a facilitator. They then go into treatment facilities and deliver some of our activities, our outreach activities, which are taster sessions of our work. That leads then to paid employment. You know, so currently we've got it's almost 50% of the workforce, if not more, is, you know, has lived experience. We have 3 former service users who are facilitating consistently for us. I mean, that whole package is as important as the public performances that we put on stage about addiction.
You're not forcing this on people, but you're facilitating if they want it. You can give them a route through and out or within. Or
yeah, it's about creating a space for them to decide that they want it. We don't thrust it upon them. I think if I had joined Outsidedge, I probably wouldn't have necessarily wanted to do that, quite frankly. So, for some people though, it's a great opportunity to, generate volunteering hours or to give back. And, it's one of the ways of well-being. So we talk a lot about the 5 ways to well-being in all of our activities.
It's an important conversation. And the reason for it is because there's a lot of research around the problems around how do people move from simply being clean and sober into something productive. Some people don't want to, that's okay. But there's been a lot of debate over the years around that and it seems to me, and this is maybe a question for David, that there's something about this notion of pathways, something about this, there's something self-motivating in the art form, I think. Why theatre, David? Why is it important? Theatre?
It is self-motivating, and I think what I used to say to people when I've been doing my workshops for a long time, and there is often somebody in a workshop who I just get a sense that Outsidedge would enhance them and give them permission to be themselves.
Okay.
Sometimes they say, what's it all about? And I didn't want to give the impression that, join Outsidedge and you're going to be a professional actor. It was a lot about discovering oneself.
Yeah.
And what you were saying, Noel, it's really, I guess it's the root of drama therapy, using drama as a therapeutic support network. And I just love what Matt was saying. People can come to Outsidedge and just stay doing the first stage forever, and not all make the transition to professional performers. But the world of recovery has expanded so greatly, and with support workers and mentoring and now social prescribing, etc., etc. So there is, but I think you mentioned it was very important. And also members of the medical profession and other professions will say, okay, well, they've now they're not taking drugs, they've got to pull themselves together and become productive members of society by last Wednesday. It's, it's people must understand that you are so more fragile than almost can be explained when you've been through that for perhaps decades, and your chemical Snoopy blanket is removed, and there is life shining bright lights in your face, and your nerve ends are screaming.
Yeah.
And that's how they can enter Outsidedge and just feel doing what they would dream of doing, but in safety.
So tell me, if you, this is for all of you, why does theatre help somebody who is emotional, raw? I mean, there's a sort of intuitive sense in which putting yourself in harm's way by going on stage would enhance that rawness in a sense. Why on earth would somebody want to do theatre if they're in that state? What do you think?
Because it's so much fun.
And also there's nothing to prove when you're doing it for Outsidedge. It's not like, there's going to be a review, I'm going to get an agent. And it's what I call safe acting, if that makes sense.
Okay, so there's safety, there's fun.
Yeah.
Matt? Why do you...
I think that's all. I think that's all true. I think that there's also something which Christopher sort of touched on before, which is that in the active performance, people, especially that have been using certain types of drugs in particular, will feel high. They will feel the thing that they used to really like, but they'll be doing it
in a healthy way.
But they'll be doing it sober, and so they're getting endorphins. They're getting an endorphin rush. They're getting dopamine hit. They're getting all the things that body that was so receptive, like a sponge to those things before, was getting before. But they're doing it sober for the first time. And we're very careful when we do public performances in particular, as Christopher discussed, that we do a checkout at the end of the performance and just bring everyone back to earth and make sure that they have a support strategy or care plan in place for themselves, a self-care plan, I suppose, so that they can go back out into the world and experience the inevitable sort of the B process it's called, where if you've gone really high, inevitably you're going to go really low, and it'll take a little bit of time to come back to the center. So we're always aware that that's difficult for anyone, but especially if being really high will then trigger some memory means for you, where you might then want to go and pursue that even more. We have to make sure that we do that in a very safe place, or safe way for people. But it's so effective then to get them, you know, to get them experiencing those feelings again, which are really good feelings. I mean, those are not bad things. You know, if you go to the gym and you get that hit, if you're on stage and people applaud you, you get that hit, that's not a bad thing.
No.
It has to be tempered and it has to be managed, I suppose.
Well, it's within a group, so it's not going to be bad, to be honest. The sort of neurochemicals it's producing are generally quite healthy and reward chemicals. I'm intrigued. Again, I've got a question for you. I'm interested in what you think about this, but there's so if we think about a lot of art forms, and I can look at that painting behind me, it can exist. You know, it'll exist whether I'm looking at it or you're seeing it or not. It's a thing. Whereas theatre, it seems to me, needs an essential element, which is, you know, the drama can happen, the workshops can happen, but theatre itself is a performance art form, and it has an audience, and it's sort of alive at that moment in the relationship between the performers and the audience. It's very much, that's the theory of theatre anyway, that it exists as an exchange. Is there something in that that's important, do you think?
I think the public nature of it, yes and no. You know, none of our drop-ins have public audiences, but they're performing for each other.
Yeah.
You know, usually even within writing workshops, people are sharing work, and so there is an element, of course, of exchange. That, you know, if you just do it on your own, I don't think it's necessarily quite as rewarding as when you're sort of, you know, when you are sharing with other people. So it's about connecting into a community of people. You know, I think that's essential to the well-being support that people derive from Outsidedge, for sure, because it's a community of people that want each other to succeed, and, you know, and they're doing activities, you know, and facilitated by people like Christopher, who are encouraging that safe space and making that safe space. And it's also, you know, for many people, you know, David talked about it sort of feeling comfortable in your skin for the first time, but actually it's a safe place for them to fail miserably. And I mean, catastrophically, horrifically fall on your face, and everyone applauds, and you get up and you go, oh, actually, that wasn't that bad. Yeah. So you're sort of, I suppose, through doing a lot of these activities, you are exercising or experiencing in a safe way tools and mechanisms that you can go out into the real world and experience. So I should say, it is not drama therapy insofar as we are not drama therapists, but I think there is a therapeutic outcome that people might experience, but we would never claim to be doing something where people are working through pain. And actually, none of the performances that we create ever go into a creation period with that kind of, oh well, let's pull up all the human you know, pain and drama and shit from people's lives and put it on stage. It's never meant to be sort of voyeuristic or perverse. Sometimes it veers towards that, but it's usually the participants, the people making the work, that feel that actually that's their voice right now and something that they want to share. But we again, because the people making the work with them tend to have lived experience, we're very, very careful and safe about, I suppose, the boundaries of how that's made and what we do.
Sure. I hear that, and I'm sure that's very true. And if people want therapy, they should go and see therapists. It's a theatre group, it's a drama group, that's what it's about. But I guess it will self-select as well. I mean, to be honest, if somebody needs other support, that I'm sure you can help signpost them and get them, and you can be part of somebody's care plan or support package, and a very important part of it. I'm still intrigued though, and this is, you know, again, thinking about Christopher and David, why on earth theatre? What is it about theatre for you? Why did you come back to theatre, Christopher, after all those beautiful experiences? You never left. Right.
I was 7 years old when I first stood on a stage and did a performance, and I did a voiceover 2 weeks ago for a person that I know, and so I'm still working, you know, over 30 years later. Theatre has been my life, and it has helped me because my recovery is linked to the success of Outsidedge.
Right.
It is an integral part, and the performance we gave last week was extraordinary, and so validating.
Yeah.
That I'm doing the right thing.
Yeah.
That I'm good at what I do, and it gets results, and they get to shine while I sit on a chair and panic, thinking it's all just about to fall apart. Somebody's gone the wrong way, or someone said the wrong line, or someone's moved, and they somehow stumble through, and the audience went ballistic and absolutely loved it, and they were thrilled. And we got all of that going on, and then we sat down and we went, wasn't that brilliant? Yeah, that was brilliant. And how are we going to cope with that? How are we going to cope with being brilliant in that moment?
It's really interesting. It's almost like the art form has evolved as you have lived and through your experiences, and it's been with you, and it's capable of being with you, which I think is a really interesting thing to think about. That for anybody who is struggling in life, to be able to find a place which it can hold them and be adaptive and malleable and give people a sense of achievement from stuff that they do with other people, with all the baggage, you know, and that's okay. And that baggage is probably useful, to be honest, in some ways. David, why for you theatre? What's your obsession with it?
Well, there was my obsession. I was a professional for about 18 years.
Right.
But in terms of theatre and Outsidedge, and it's a form of what I would describe as non-judgmental theatre.
Right.
You know, it's a safe place to explore, and it is often said, if you take any addict or alcoholic, that they've been excellent performers at some time or another on their journey.
Yeah.
So if that makes sense, and I'm thinking back to the people that have got involved with Outsidedge and then gone off and done, you know, maybe important civilian careers, and some who have become performers, writers, or indeed directors. I think it's a special thing. It's a group process. It's not the loneliness of the actor.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate enough to spend a bit of time working with Joan Littlewood in the 70s, and that taught me.
People who don't know, Joan Littlewood was a sort of big figure in theatre. If you're old like me, it's certainly sort of
and I believe I didn't know until I read the news sheet that the Outsidedge have been doing something about Joan Littlewood. But one of the things that I bonded with Phil Fox, Joan was our hero, just second.
Yeah, absolutely, of course.
And that was all about not I'm going to be the star, but it's the ensemble, and that's what Outsidedge is. It's an ensemble, it's a team, and there's an equality about it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm intrigued by these things because when I think of theatre, I think of the very grounded life skills that it gives people.
Yeah,
you know, the capacity to be in groups, develop roles, learn a role, learn a script, engage with people, relate to people, play different roles, come in and out of role, because isn't that how life is?
Well, yeah. When I started my workshops, I would do, I guess, we were doing role playing. I was taking the students, patients, clients, whatever they were that year called, role playing, getting jobs, and they'd never done that before. They'd never gone for a job or never gone for a job. So we were using the art of role playing theatre. And the groups that I run today, as far as I'm concerned, I am presenting a theatrical performance to my clients. So it's there's nothing like it.
Yeah. I'm intrigued, Matt, because I know you come from not the recovery background. You come from sort of very serious theatre background, career director, and I've worked with you in that context, and you're very, you're a brilliant director. I really enjoyed your work. I enjoyed working with you. But why Outsidedge? I mean, it's not an obvious career move. May I say that?
No, I think I told this story before on your show. I mean, you know, this has always been an accident. I mean, I didn't. I thought I might want to be an artistic director, and this was, I think, the first job that came up, and someone convinced me to apply for it because it would be good experience to write to write my CV and write a cover letter, and then eventually do a board interview, which I didn't think I was going to get. So
right.
none of this was really meant to happen. It's been the most extraordinary journey, that, you know, the most unexpected journey of my life, but it was definitely not what I had sort of imagined in the beginning of 2018 would happen. So yeah, but you know, I think there is a sort
Let
of.
me ask a different question then.
Yeah.
Why did you stay? Why have you stayed? Because I used to go around saying that, you know, theater could change the world. So, you know, right.
I think we all sort of say that because, you know, we really have to believe
it does. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Well, it does, but it's also so difficult to make and to forge a career in that you have to sort of justify the pain. So you say, well, you know, I'm doing this thing that will change the world, and you know, and I really did believe it, but actually I think in retrospect what I probably meant was I really like it, and therefore I want to continue doing it, and I think, you know, other people should probably do it too because I like it. And when I started at Outsidedge, you know, in our first week I went to all of our drop-in drama groups, so we ran about 4, maybe less at the time. So I went to back across a week, and I heard the same story from the people that were attending the activities, and I never thought of myself as a applied or, you know, participatory arts practitioner either, I should say. So I was sort of going into like the deep end with very, very vulnerable adults, but they kept saying across the week that, you know, that they were, you know, suicidal, that the only reason they'd gotten out of bed that day was to come to Outsidedge, that, you know, they had tried to kill themselves, but, you know, that one of the things that sort of had kept them going, or that they were sort of happy to, you know, keep living one more day, was that they had this thing that they could go to. And after that week, you know, it was a very short period of time, but after that week, I thought, you know, actually theater can probably change the world. It's just not going to do it the way that I thought it was going to do. That the audience was going to stand up like in a Joan Littlewood production and sort of storm the barricades, but actually that these little micro changes in the community and people's lives could lead to a better future for all of us. And actually that the people who I had never thought that I would encounter in my life in a drug rehab center in, you know, Fulham, which I don't think I'd ever been to Fulham until I started Outsidedge, that I would fight for their right to access that, because I think that access to that kind of, you know, creative activity in one's life is a basic human right. And I found myself suddenly in a very fortunate position to be able to advocate very, very strongly for that, and have done now for, you know, for 5 years, and have grown it, because I do believe that, you know, all of the people that we encounter who have never been to a theater before, that have never gone to see, you know, ballet or contemporary dance, or, you know, to have written a play or written poetry, they should have, you know, access to that as a possibility in their life. Whether they do anything with it, I don't care. It's up to them. It's about, you know, their choice of the progression pathway they want to take, but they have an absolute basic human right to be able to access it and to be given it as an opportunity. And, you know, I do believe very strongly in that now. And, you know, it doesn't mean that I don't, you know, still want to make art for art's sake. It's something that I feel very fulfilled by personally and creatively, but I think that there is a balance. There's more of a balance now in my perspective about what an arts organization is, what its civic role is, and I suppose also in my own aesthetic and my own sort of, you know, desire to make work that somehow grapples with that as a possibility. I don't quite know what that necessarily will look like in the future, but I know that has been a life-changing experience for me, and it happened across 3 days or 4 days in 2018.
Yeah, I mean,
and then David took me to an AA meeting.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting, I think, this notion that all of you seem to be talking about. I'm going to use a word here that you haven't used, so excuse me for interpreting, but what comes to mind is this notion of transformation, that things can transform and lives can transform, and Outsidedge is transformative as an experience for everybody that's involved. And I guess because it's alive as a creative thing in its own right, you know, that is made up of lots of different people coming from lots of different perspectives, but it is authentic as a creative product.
I agree totally with you, Noel, but I think just to throw a slight spanner in the works, as a possible challenge, I'm not sure necessarily it's always about transformation, because I don't think it's about changing something. Sometimes it's more about finding authenticity. So we were sort of joking around in the office today, because we run a masterclass session. We're getting a guy who does clown to come in to do some clown workshops. And one of the things that he says he teaches is authentic play. And someone in the office said, the hell is authentic play? And I said, well, I guess, actually it's sort of a wonderful notion, because especially as actors, sometimes we play at playing, like we pretend to play. So instead of transforming ourselves into a playful being, I think the clown workshop and some acting exercises, it's about actually having fun or actually experiencing something. And that sort of goes back to some of the things that, that David and Christopher were talking about earlier, where after you've gotten, after you take away the sort of, the veil or the lens of drugs, you're suddenly confronted with reality, with actually who you are, how the world is. And that's a really dangerous, beautiful, scary place and experience to negotiate, because it's authentic. And sometimes, again, it's about being authentic for the first time. When working with acting students, so much of so much of sort of, acting pedagogy is about trying to get them back to themselves, get you back on voice, back on breath, get into your body, not as you think you should be holding yourself, but as your body actually holds itself. And that's more difficult than teaching them how to become a funny person or to put on a funny voice. So sort of transformation and authenticity kind of dynamically work together, don't they, or intersect?
It doesn't matter the words. I mean, I think that it's trying to get to what is a real experience in life, and actually inauthentic life is so soul destroying for anybody who's involved in inauthentic life. And when they have an opportunity to live life in an authentic way, most people I know will grasp it, unless they're an orange nutter in New York. Actively avoid anything authentic whatsoever, but hopefully that nutter's getting their comeuppance these days. I'm very happy about that. I don't mind a little bit of politics in the show. I'm delighted by that performance at the moment. But I mean, it's not so much about the word, but it does seem to me all three of you have had this thing called Outsidedge has impacted upon you in ways that I guess you would say, in the broadest sense, are positive and helpful to you as people and in your lives, right? Is that broad enough to say it in that way? Yeah. And and it's like, it's really clearly coming across from talking to you, and you're very different people with different experiences. And I guess that somehow captures, I'm guessing, the culture of Outsidedge and what is on offer to somebody who comes to it, that they can have this incredible experience, which might involve going off and getting a job in the West End. It might involve just having a better conversation with your mum about you were a crappy idiot with her for a long time, and you find better words and ways of being with that. Whatever that is, something's going to be available for you as a human being through this process, right? Yeah, it's going to have an impact. Okay. And it seems to me it's going to have a very positive impact. And it seems to me you're all a bag of cats and there's no way I'm going to control you. So I give up. And I guess that's very much like your workshops as well. Herding cats, give up. Just let them get on with scratching each other, all right? We are coming towards the end of the show. As you can, I'm wrapping up and talking more often now. And so I want to get to, what are you actually doing at the moment? What's on offer to people? I want to know how people get hold of you if they want to come along. I want to know how people can participate by being, a viewer, an audience member, because you have these shows which people can come along and watch, and that's a really important role as audience as well. You don't have to just come along and do the workshop. So tell me where are you? What are you doing? What are the services? Who's doing what? What's available? Any one of you can do that. But I guess Matt probably is the person who writes the funding applications and can rattle this stuff off, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, so anyone can join. All of our activities are free, and the only requirement that we have is that people are sober on the day that they attend the activities. So we currently run drop-in groups.
You mean sober from substance or alcohol? Yeah. Okay.
So the activities are running across London. We've got drop-in drama, which is a fun improvisation, a series of fun improvisation games. And that happens on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and also Friday evenings.
Yeah.
We have a group called Right Now, which is a drop-in script writing group, and that happens on Tuesday and Wednesday. We have a women's drama group, so a female-only space that meets on Thursday afternoons. And if you want to find out where those are taking place across London and the exact times, you can go to our website, which is www.edgetc.org. That's www.edgetc, like edge, company.org. And we'd love to hear from you, and you can come along and join in.
Brilliant. It's been really fab to have you folks with me this evening. Really, I mean, genuinely, I love these conversations because it's at the heart of my authentic experience. So, and it feeds me and nurtures me. So I'm always very grateful for it. You guys need to freeze now while I go and toggle off. And so you stay there while I turn the toggles off. I'll catch up with everybody next week. I have no idea who's on the show, but it'll be somebody good. And I shall see you all next week, and bye-bye.